America is the genesis of what we call settler colonialism. And the American model was exported all around the world. Abraham Lincoln generalized the solution of reservations. They herded American Indians into separate territories. For the Nazis, this was the inspiration. Hitler realized two things. One, that genocide was doable. It is possible to do genocide. That's what Hitler realized. Second thing Hitler realized is that you don't have to have a common citizenship. You can differentiate between people. The Nuremberg laws were patterned after American laws. Anyway, the US put Indians in reservations. The US invented the model.
That is Zohran Mamdani's dad, who we brought here and is now a professor at Columbia University. Sick. I want to go to Robert Spencer. He's the author of Intifada on the Hudson, The Selling of Zohran Mamdani. Robert, how are you, sir?
Very good, thanks. How are you?
Very good. What does Zohran's being a Muslim, what does that have to do with anything? Why does that matter?
Well, it matters because Islam is a political system and one that is supremacist, aggressive, violent, and expansionist, and not just a religion in the Western sense of Judaism or Christianity. And so we have to understand that this is a guy who is, in the first place, he's not just a Muslim, he's a 12er Shiite. That is the official religion, 12er Shiism, of the Islamic Republic of Iran, where the people are ordered every week in the mosques on Friday, the big day for the sermon at the mosque, they have to chant "Death to America." And the supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah Khamenei, has said that this is not just a slogan, it's the goal and the mission of our regime. So you've got Mamdani holding to that view and holding in general to Islam, which is a political system that asserts its right as being supposedly divine to replace and supplant every other political system. You've got his father in the clip that you just played. And mind you, he's very close. He's made it very clear that what he holds to, he learned from his parents. He is a good boy, you know, he's reflecting the ideology of his parents. And his father is a Marxist who hates America. He also is a Marxist who hates America. This is not incompatible with his Islam. There are, of course, there's the long-standing leftist Islamic alliance, and it is based on anti-Americanism and the desire to establish an internationalist authoritarian regime in place of America and other countries. So this is what he's bringing to Gracie Mansion.
How do you know that that's his branch of Islam that he follows, you mentioned?
Oh, he's made no secret about that. He said on Twitter several years ago, when it was still Twitter, that he is Ithna Asheri, which is a 12er Shiite. And so he has not concealed that in any way. He also made a point of touring around in mosques, both Sunni and Shiite mosques, during his campaign, where he presented himself as the Muslim candidate, which is not like being the Methodist candidate or the Catholic candidate or something like that, but reflects this political program that is inherent in Islam that both Sunnis and Shia share. And one of his taglines in his stump speech at the mosques was that Muslims don't just belong in New York City, but they belong in City Hall, which to non-Muslims who don't know about Islam, they think, oh, that just means he wants to have Muslims present in government. Because of Islam's political and supremacist nature, it's actually quite an ominous statement for non-Muslims who have a carefully, explicitly delineated second-class status in Islamic society.
What do you think his, Zohran's, motive is? Why is he doing this?
One of the candidates that he worked for when before he became a politician himself, he worked for several socialist candidates to get them elected. And one of them said recently that he's a true believer. He is deeply dedicated to not only his socialism, but his Islam. And so he intends to bring both to New York in a big way.
What are the foreigners, the amount of foreigners that are in New York City right now? 62% of children live in a household with a foreign-born person. And also the South Asia, I read an article recently about the South Asia Get Out the Vote campaign. It's unbelievable what has happened in New York City over these years.
Yeah, and the Muslims vote in a block. They see, you look at every other group when they break down elections of various kinds around the country, and they say, well, the Hispanics went 62% for this candidate and 38% for that one, or the women voted 52% for this candidate and 48% for that one, whatever. But when you come to Islam, it's 100 because Islam is collectivist. There might be a handful of people who dissent, but ordinarily, we're talking about a group that does what the leader tells them to do. The Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, was very clear about this. You obey your leader, even if he's an Ethiopian with a head like a raisin. That statement is often quoted to show, oh, Muhammad was a racist. And that's all true. But more importantly, really, is that Muhammad was an authoritarian. And this is a group that votes as a bloc, which makes it very attractive to politicians of all stripes in the United States. But it also delivered the city for Mamdani, and it will deliver other cities for many other Muslim candidates in the near future.
What is this word, this Islam word, taqariya? It's like deceit. Can you explain that for us?
Yeah, Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, he said, war is deceit. And deceit is, particularly actually in Twelver Shiite Islam, a central part of their understanding of what it means to be practicing their religion. Now, you might think that's an awfully strange thing to build a religion around, but it's because the Sunnis are such an overwhelming majority of Muslims, 85 to 90% worldwide, and they kill Shiites. So Shiites have learned over the years to lie about their religion in order to protect themselves. And this became a cornerstone of Shiite theology, that you deceive your enemies and pretend to be on their side. And so this is also something we should not discount when it comes to Zohran Mamdani. Now, really, he's being quite open about his anti-Americanism and his Marxism. But at the same time, there's no doubt that he is being deceitful about just exactly how bad it's going to be, which we're going to see now in the near future.
Someone called into my radio show the other day and said, oh, who cares? He was in Oklahoma. So who cares about New York City? Let New York City fall, and let New York, and let California, and let Illinois, and let Virginia, and he kept naming states. I was like, hey man, first of all, those are all in America. Second of all, you're naming a lot of states that you're willing just to give up on and write off. This is becoming quite a big problem. And if you want to talk about Islam, I'm concerned about Michigan, of course, but also Texas. What is happening in these states, and what do you see the state of the rise of Islam across the country? Muslims are still only 1% of the country, but so is this something to be concerned about or no?
Yeah, it's Muslims are just 1% of the country, but because it's a political system as well as a religion, they seek political power out of proportion to their numbers. And there is a concerted effort on the part of an organization called Engage, which is connected to the Muslim Brotherhood, to elect Muslims at every level of American politics. And this is, as you noted, particularly going on in Michigan and Texas right now. Of course, in Texas, we also have the Epic City Sharia-based community, and there are going to be many more Sharia enclaves in the United States also in the near future. But the whole idea is to have Muslims all over the political system, and then counter-terror efforts are stymied. And that is exactly what Mamdani is looking at. Linda Sarsour, the famous leftist hijab-wearing Muslim activist, she has said just in the last few days that he promised to dismantle the Strategic Response Group, which is the NYPD's counter-terror apparatus. So New York City is not going to be policing terrorism. which gives, of course, a free hand to the terrorists who struck on 9/11 and will almost certainly strike again.
Amazing. All right, so what are we to do without being called Islamophobic or racist or whatever? What are we to do to prevent this threat?
Well, I'm afraid we're going to be called that if we mount the slightest bit of resistance. And we just have to take it and plow on and understand that we need to meet, engage, and deal with trying to defeat these Muslim candidates. Because, like I said before, this is not just whether you elect a Baptist or a Methodist. This is a much different thing. And we need to be talking about that, raising public awareness about that, and fighting it at the ballot box wherever there are Muslim candidates running, because this is an effort that will ultimately destroy America as a free republic.
The Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, a Muslim hijab-wearing woman as well, and no one cared or paid much attention to that. Robert Spencer is the author of the book Intifada on the Hudson, the selling of Zohran Mamdani. Robert, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Just want to play this clip here of AOC at the Zohran rally about a week or so before the election. This was her opening line.
Slice of New York City alone, we represent over 100 languages and cultures.
Yay! We can't talk to each other. Hooray! The crowd went wild. We literally can't communicate. Yay, Tower of Babel! People came together to build a tower to make a name for ourselves. God's punishment, his punishment, was they can't communicate with each other anymore. God's punishment was diversity of language. The people did not obey God's command to spread out all over the earth. This was their punishment to force them to do it. How much of Zohran winning this election is a punishment from God? Because God has a history of giving people what they want. One of my favorite Bible stories is when the Israelites wanted a king. They wanted a king just like all the other nations. That's what they said, like all the other nations. And Samuel comes and says, that's not a good idea, guys. It's in 1 Samuel 8:10. It's worth reading the whole thing. But he goes through all the reasons why you shouldn't want a king. He says, the king will conscript your sons for the military. The king's going to force you to work in the fields for him. He's going to force your daughters to work. He's going to steal land from you. He's going to give your land to his servants. The king's going to tax you more than ever, all to help benefit his people. All these reasons not to have a king. And then in verse 18 it says, and in that day you will cry out because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves. But the Lord will not answer you in that day. Do you see a comparison to today? Right? A communist mayor will steal your money, if you have any. He'll take your money to enrich his cronies. He'll turn the recipients of welfare into his slaves, which is what happened when you live on welfare, generationally, of course. You're beholden to whatever scraps the government will give you. This is a warning. There was a punishment that God gave the people, a king. And here we are in America coming right after a no kings rally across the country, and those same people voted for a communist. Quick sidebar, the New York Times went to a rally for Zohran, and they took a picture of this fella. Tulashi Shitraka, whatever. This is his first time voter. And he went to this Mamdani rally. He's from Nepal. And he said, New York City should not be a city of millionaires and billionaires. It should be for all. Okay, that's what this guy from Nepal said. He's going to vote. First time voter, great. The New York Times, 2 days before they posted that picture, 2 days, wrote a story in a different section of the newspaper about a revolution that is currently taking place in, of all places, Nepal, where that guy's from. And the New York Times said that young Nepalis are chafed at the government's abrupt ban of social media, because what the young people wanted was an end to the corruption in a country where the families of communists parade their wealth around to the rest of the population that has seemed to slide into hopelessness. So I just want to be very clear with this. We have Nepal, a communist country, where the extremely wealthy families that are connected to the Communist Party have tons of money and are flaunting it to everyone else who is poor and hopeless. So they have overthrown the communist government in Nepal. That guy flees Nepal to our country, hates the millionaires and billionaires, and votes to turn New York City communist, just like the country he left. Not to mention Mamdani himself is a multimillionaire. His mom's this massive Bollywood director, has a $50 million net worth. Okay, are you with me? How insane this is? One more line from AOC's speech.
We welcome people of all religions, faiths, and creeds.
Yay, woohoo, we have no unifying principles. Hooray, there's nothing that unites us other than hating this country. You gotta always put a red flag on the field when you hear someone use a word that we don't use in real life. And creeds is one of those words. It's a very interesting word that I've never used ever in real life. I've never used it in like a sentence, but politicians throw it around all the time. A creed. What is a creed? So I looked it up. I looked up the Webster's Dictionary, original dictionary, Webster's Dictionary 1828.com. And there's two definitions for the word creed. The first most important definition, a brief summary of the articles of Christian faith. The second is that which is believed, any system of principles which are believed and professed. But I love how the definition of creed, the first definition, is a summary of the Christian faith. So you didn't have to say Christian creed. There was just creed. It was just the creed. Here's my creed. And it was a Christian creed. And yeah, there were different creeds, but they were all Christian creeds. So you have like the Apostles' Creed from the year like 200. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. And there were other Christian creeds, but they were all like, they all worked together. It was all the same Christianity, just slightly different, wording of the same ideas, but it was all Christian. So you wouldn't say Christian creed, that's redundant. That's the original definition of this word, creed. But when AOC uses the word creeds, she's talking about countless different principles that are believed and professed that have nothing to do with Christianity. And we're supposed to celebrate the fact that we all believe different things. That is not good to celebrate. We need one creed. We need a creed. That's like the creed. We need a Christian creed. That's the creed in this country. That's how this country used to be. And just like the Israelites begged for an earthly king, I should say, unlike how they begged for it, we need to follow the King of Kings. That's how to save souls. That's how to save this country. When you embrace thousands of creeds and an infinite number of genders and 100 different languages, this can only on purpose. This can only on purpose cause division and chaos, and that's where the devil gets a foothold. We did another episode on my podcast, Politics by Faith, about Zohran and how when Christianity decreases, communism by necessity, it must also increase. There's a direct inverse correlation. As Christianity goes down, the belief in communism goes up. And that is because Karl, so people always get focused on Marxism. You got to know about Karl. That's why I call it Karlism. When you know about Karl and how much Karl hated Christians and hated Christianity, then Marxism makes perfect sense. It is at its people think Marxism is anti-capitalist. It is, but that's the second order. The first order, the first purpose of Karl is to take down Christianity. I explain more of that on my podcast, Politics by Faith. It's where we take the news of the day, we run it through the Bible, run it through a biblical lens, and try to make sense of this crazy world around us. Listen, Zohran won, a lot of losses out of the most recent election. We got a year now. We got a year, less than a year now for the midterm elections. Onward and upward. Let's focus, refocus on what matters, and save this country coming up in our next election. But every day until then too. Podcast, Politics by Faith, First TV. Mike Slater. Spread the word.